let me start just by talking about Technium and where the service fits amongst all the other companies out there. There's a lot of companies who are doing managed service. So where does Technium differ?
So I think the biggest thing is that as a more operations focused business, our value proposition is that we like to function as if we're an extension of our customers' teams,
Mhm.
and we work on maintenance, security maintenance, and vigilance. So I think the two biggest things I like to say is that we not only help design and put in place security solutions, but we help maintain them in partnership with our customers. So I guess the biggest value proposition for us would be that we not only get you to a more secure position, but we keep you there.
And is that something that's kind of hard to find, with the providers that are out there now, a company that could actually do that?
Well, I guess I would say yes, and obviously I'm biased, but
Right.
reason I can say yes is that to date we have yet to take over a customer network where the security infrastructure is configured even at a reasonable level. The
Really?
the typical case is that we find environments where security hasn't been maintained at all. So, in my opinion,
Yeah.
and this spans small, medium, and large size customers, security is very poorly maintained.
Okay, that's really interesting. So when you're talking about the lack of maintenance, is that patching? Are those just general vulnerabilities? What are certain tools that are not configured or used properly? Where are some of the biggest lapses you're seeing out there?
Well, I mean, if you were to talk to a security professional and say, what's the most important thing I should do? Every security professional would say the first step before we even talk about more advanced security is patching. And you just brought it up, right? So
Right.
many companies see that as I need to patch my workstations. That's where all the vulnerabilities come in. Of course, that makes great sense. But the thing that we see is that the firewalls, the security infrastructure, wherever it is, virtual security, wireless security, that call it the network topology, remote access VPN, those environments are often set up either without even turning on some of the capabilities of the devices, or without consideration for business rules and changing business rules. And so I always say security ongoing process, it's not a project. So what I think, answer to your question is it would be all of those network points are typically very poorly maintained, and I think it's a terrible risk because you can't depend on, patching your endpoints and set and forget it security at the network level.
Okay, great. So, and I understand that Technium has a tool that you developed, right? That assists with this, with the vulnerability scanning, the SAARC tool, I believe.
Yep, we do. So, um, SARC was pretty much born out of necessity for us.
Mm.
Is the best way I can characterize it, because we realized that as a NOC, Network Operations Center, turning into a Network and Security Operations Center, we now call it the NSOC. We were not doing the job that our customers needed us to do 5 years ago. We would, as typical network engineers would do, we would design and implement and monitor, but the desire to actually make changes in the environment was low, because in the old days of networking, you would be very careful to make network changes because of the impact it could have. It could take whole sites down. So there was, a resistance to that. Now, as security risks grew, and as we realized that our responsibility was to maintain the security, like I mentioned, we needed to systematize behavior, because you couldn't depend on a human being to notice a vulnerability, read about it, remember to do it on a checklist. It's just not a good system. It's not a service that I would. So we built a tool, and the tool integrates backup, traditional or typical monitoring, and we built in the Nessus vulnerability scanner, which was the biggest pivot for our company, because by integrating these tools, what happens is that when the vulnerabilities are detected, we have that posted as if it's an alert in our system, and then we can act on that. So the tool drives our operations behavior and creates a better sort of security position or maintenance for customers.
Okay, so that's creating a situation where if a customer has Technium now, they can be sure that the vulnerabilities have been identified and that you are remediating that in real time. So how long does it usually take for you guys to remediate a found vulnerability?
So I'll answer that two ways. So the first is the actual vulnerability that's found. We have a whole change management process, so it really can be done based on urgency. So if it's a critical vulnerability and it is um, uh, an item that is not only critical, but also the customer is subject to a high risk because of it. So they have the vulnerability and they use that particular software or access, and it's a high risk. We can do emergency changes as quick as the customer can give us approval for that, and as quickly as we can define a safe change.
So when you come in to do that, is that going to disrupt network and performance activity for that company?
It always could, and there's a risk reward with that. So for certain vulnerabilities, we may have to impact performance or function of the network, but we try very hard through design and through really good change management to make that as minimal as possible. So oftentimes we'll have redundancy in the network and we can do the change with very limited impact on users. So
Right.
that's the goal, right? And then the only other thing I would say is that fixing a vulnerability is one thing, but systemically reducing your critical and high vulnerabilities is another thing. So
Okay.
what we do is we also do vulnerability management from a trend perspective. So what that means is that we show a report with regularity to customers of where their vulnerabilities are and what they are. We talk through which ones they are subject to risk from, and then our goal is to drive down their total critical and high vulnerabilities so that we constantly are pushing those down, and then the low and medium ones we gradually bring down over time. So I would say over an 8-week period from initially onboarding a customer, we have a commitment to get them to the point where they have no critical vulnerabilities, no high vulnerabilities, and we've tuned their environment as optimally as we can.
And now at that point, would you rate their security posture as being very strong? Would it be a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 just from doing the scanning and then the 8-week period? Is that going to get them to where they need to be?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because there's so many parts of security. But
Mhm.
I would absolutely say that this checks a ton of boxes in the typical audit checklist that customers go through. So
Right.
once we've done this, they can check the penetration test checkbox. They can check the vulnerability management checkbox. They can check the regular security reporting and demonstration of that checkbox. These are all things that are very compliance oriented,
Mhm.
but it also is just good health. So I would say,
Right.
without being able to give an actual number, I would say, if you consider workstation patching as job one, this would absolutely be job two. And I think we get them to a much more significantly improved position. And I would say if you had a scoring system, absolutely a huge impact.
Well, and this is what you were talking about earlier in the conversation, where you said that most of the companies or most of the environments you go into with a new company have not done all of this stuff. Can I
Mhm.
ask you just a follow up for that? So, and this is more of a philosophical question, but why, right? Why wouldn't these companies that have this valuable information to protect, why wouldn't this be step one on their priority list to make sure these things have been done in order to get that security posture to that 9 or 10?
Um, I think there's two reasons. One is it's a blind item, and a lot of people don't know what they don't know. They don't have um, they don't have visibility. They're not used to looking at this type of security data until they've been presented with it. It's shocking. We have one customer, it's a great line. They said to us, since working with you guys, I now can't unsee what I've seen about my network. Right. So
That's
you
a good,
don't know what you
that's a
don't
good one.
know.
Do you have any last things you want to say?
Only that we also try to be as humble as we can, and we've built our own ecosystem and network of resources and relationships because security is such a broad picture, Greg. We don't pretend to be everything to everybody. We also have developed relationships with other security professionals for example, forensics professionals,
Okay.
policy development professionals. So in addition to working with Technium on our core competencies, we also have a really strong network of companies that we work with to help with various things. So what I like to think of is that when we work with a company, they know that they've got not only a security partner that they can depend on, but someone that has access to other resources when they need them. And that's what I'd like us to be as a company, as a true partner to our customers.